Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files, where we are going to discuss Janis Joplin Pearl. And as many of you probably know, especially if you've seen the picture on my on the thumbnail here, the one-step version of Pearl just got released, and I got my copy. So I'm going to do a sound quality shootout between that and some of the other copies that I already have. So let's get into it and show you the versions that I already have. I want to also say that you're probably going to hear some banging around upstairs, so I apologize ahead of time if you hear some stuff that kind of bugs you. But anyways, I don't have a sound isolation booth, so what can you do? You have to live with the family and things that are going on around you, right? So first, here is the One Step by Mofi. I got number 797. And so there's that one. I also have this. This is from the box set, which I'll show you here in a second. That came out in 2012. It was basically the Janis, the classic LP collection. It claims that the guys from Sundazed mastered this, and I can't remember who cut it now, and I'll put it up in the description once, but I do. But this one also was pressed at RTI, as have all the ones that I'm going to be going over, which is kind of interesting. And finally, the last one that I did a sound quality shootout with is the Mobile Fidelity 45 RPM version that came out a few years back. It says it's a special limited edition. It doesn't say of how many, but I got number 179 on this one. So again, this one very similar in terms of its specs to the One Step. It's a 45 RPM 2-record set. The interesting thing about this, though, pressed at RTI, the interesting thing about both versions of the Mofis, though, is Sean Britton co-mastered the standard 45 RPM, and Rob Lavorti co-mastered the One Step. So that's kind of interesting. So you're going to get, potentially anyways, a slight bit different take on it. So we'll go over that a little bit in detail and tell you what the differences are. So as I always do it, and just to kind of give you a brief description of how I do these shootouts, I initially, in this particular case, and in the case in most cases, especially if it's a new release that's involved, I listen to the new release, in this case, the One Step, all the way through, kind of determine which songs I want to choose as the shootout songs, because it's just impossible to kind of listen to a whole album and then go back and listen to a whole album again and do a true A-B comparison. So what I do is I take it, listen to it once, figure out which songs are going to be the best ones to do a shootout with. You know, which ones kind of have the best sound stage or best effects or best tonal quality or sound quality about them. Which ones I think will make the best case for differences between the different versions of the albums. So, having said that, I listened to the One Step. I mean, as usual, thought it sounded amazing. You know, really, really quiet vinyl as usual, really well pressed, a good mastering, had great wide sound stage, kind of went beyond the speakers a little bit, great depth, great separation between instruments, and, you know, pretty decent EQ overall. I then listened to the 45 RPM standard version, and, you know, it was pretty similar, but there were some pretty noticeable differences as well. I mean, the soundstage width was about the same. The soundstage depth was probably very similar, although they might be able to give a little bit of an edge to the One Step, and maybe a little bit of a difference in the separation of instruments between the two. But the most noticeable difference right off the bat was some of the lower mid-range or upper mid-bass area. It sounds like that there was probably either a little bit more of that frequency range in the standard 45 RPM versus the one step, or the one step boosted kind of the upper mid range a little bit, or I should say regular mid range, because it just sounded like the voice didn't have as much lower end to its frequencies, right? In the frequency range that the lower parts of the vocals would be. It didn't seem like there was as much of that there, where when in some circumstances that was beneficial, because it almost, muddying it is kind of a strong term, but it almost gave it a muddy tonal quality to it, but I wouldn't say that it was completely muddy. So then I listened to the Legacy edition, and quite frankly, actually the EQ on that one and the standard 45 RPM Mofi were very, very, very close. Very hard to hear much of a difference. Oh, and kind of to back up a little bit, the one step probably had a hair more deep bass to it. So anyway, but from an EQ standpoint, the standard 45 RPM and the Legacy edition sounded nearly identical. So it sounded pretty decent overall, and sound clarity, quality was really good. The big difference, I would say, between the Legacy Edition Sony one and both of the Mofis is, the soundstage maybe wasn't quite as wide or quite as deep, but it was very close. But the biggest difference, if you're doing critical listening between all of them, would be that this is the separation between the instruments. It's more noticeable that there's less of that separation on the Legacy versus both of the Mofis, but there is a hair more separation on the one step versus the standard mobile fidelity, but it's very minor. So I would say, any one of these copies are great. I am making an assumption here, but I believe if you were to get a standard Sony Legacy reissue of Pearl, it's probably the same as the one that I demoed here. So my guess is you probably still can get that version of Pearl if you wanted to, and it's a great copy, and it's certainly going to be a significant savings to buy that, and especially if you're not one to kind of sit in the sweet spot and really listen to music, I think you'd still be pretty happy with it. That being said, the standard one step, the standard 45 RPM and the mobile fidelity one step are definitely a notch above, with the one step definitely giving a slight edge. Not a whole lot, but a slight edge, mainly just because I think, again, there's a little bit more separation. There may be a touch better, more clarity, but that might also be part of the EQing that's different between the two that I'm noticing, and that's maybe what's giving the feeling that there's more clarity. I mean, obviously there's less steps in making a one step, and that's why they call them a one step, so that might play a role also. But overall, of the one, I wish I had an original copy, original pressing, because I'd really love to hear what that one sounds like to compare it to these other ones. But alas, I don't. But between those three, the one step definitely has the edge. The 45 RPM, standard 45 RPM by Mofi, is a close second, and quite frankly, a very close third is the Sony Legacy. On a budget, I don't think you'll be disappointed with the standard one, but it's clear that the one step does sound better, and it would be the one to go to, in my opinion, if you're wanting to pick a copy up and it was one of your favorite albums. So that's everything I've got for today. You could see all my new stuff that I picked up this week. That's what I always put behind me. And this is probably going to be the next sound quality shootout that I have coming. I have up here, you can barely see, is the Super Deluxe Edition as well, which has a surround sound mix by Steve Wilson as well. But anyways, that's everything I've got for today. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you have multiple versions of Pearl and have an opinion on which one you think sounds the best? And do you have the one step, and do you agree with what I've said here? I'd love to hear your take. Please make those comments below. If you liked the video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button and also hit that alert bell to let you know when my new videos come out. That is it for today. Also, check out my social media pages. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. I've got them linked down below, for Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And I love having conversations with other people on those pages as well. So that's all for today. Thank you very much, and you have a great week.